Tengo el agrado de invitar a la ingeniera Ilya Espino de Marotta, la administradora adjunta y vicepresidenta de operaciones del Canal de Panamá, por sus palabras y informaciones sobre el canal. Por favor, Ilya.
I need the PowerPoint slider. Well, good afternoon. I am going to speak a little bit about the expansion program, why we had to do it, how we went about it, and I'll speak a little bit also about the women role during the project. So, who are we? Panama is a logistic hub. It's an entry port for many different routes in world commerce. We have about 144 different trade routes that go to 1,700 different ports in 160 countries in the world. So when the canal was transferred from the US to Panama, we sure didn't want to lose that world commerce that comes through here. What are we? We are a water elevator. Basically, we move ships from one ocean to the other going through the mountain range of Panama. So, and it's everything gravity fed, and we work with fresh water. It's 80 kilometers long. When the canal was going to be transferred from from the USA to Panama, we saw that the numbers of vessels was pretty much stagnant, but the vessel size was increasing significantly, and we charge for cargo capacity. So the way to maintain, to not become a regional canal, but to be a worldwide canal, it was to expand the canal. So we embarked in a project that showed how we were losing relevance in the container market, which was the most important market for the Panama Canal. We see how in 2014, the US West Coast, using the intermodal, had a big share, just like a Suez Canal, and Panama was very small. We were losing competitivity, and the container trade route is the most important one for the Panama Canal. Sorry. So we see how we went in 2014 of having a 30% share of that market to 2020, a 55% share of that market. The expansion was inaugurated in 2016. So you can see there how we regain some of the trade that we were losing because we didn't have the right size to put the right size vessels. So this is what the Panama Canal looks like in the Atlantic side. You can see on one side there's 2 lanes of the Panamax locks, and on the opposite side you see one of the new locks with the water-saving basins, which was a new technology that we implemented to save water. 60% of the water that the Neo Panamax locks use is recycled for the next transit. So we use 7% less water per transit in the new locks than the original locks. And basically, how do we went through this? We had a 5-year study program. There was, when the constitutional title for the Panama Canal was elaborated, it said that if the Panama, as a country, ever wanted to invest in a 3rd set of locks, we'd have to go to a national referendum. So it needed to be a very well thought out and analyzed project. We did all kinds of studies, 5 years, social, environmental, financial, marketing, and then we had to go tell the country what this project was about, and we couldn't go for or against the project. We just had to say what the project was about. As an institution, we couldn't ask people to vote yes. We just needed to present the facts. And about 48% of the population, voting population went to vote, and 78% of the votes were for the project. So we did a 5-year analysis. We did some physical models in France. We had over 120 studies, $40 million, 5 years, to make sure the project we were going to build was very well thought out and defined, and we had a robust budget. We also did an info conference in Panama, where we had over 806 people from different countries, different companies, where we explained what the project was about, and this was to ensure that we had enough bidders for the project. So we explained what it was about. We also secured a $2.3 billion loan from 5 different multilateral agencies, one single contract with all of them. And we self-financed $2.9 billion. It was a 20-year loan, 10 years grace period. We only pay interest, and then 10 years to pay the loan back. So this is what the project was about. This is the Isthmus of Panama. The yellow line you see across the isthmus basically is the navigational channel that we had to make deeper and wider for the bigger ships. We had to dredge the sea entrances. We had to create a brand new channel, and we had to build the new locks. So if we think about the original construction of the Panama Canal, between land excavation and dredging, it was about 200 million cubic meters of dirt excavated. The expansion was 150 million cubic meters of ground excavated. We had to create a brand new access channel because the original locks go from sea level to Miraflores Lake, which is it's a two-step lock that raises you 18 meters above sea level, and then you go to Pedro Miguel. Well, the new locks go straight 27 meters above sea level from the sea to Gatun Lake. So we had to build a new access channel. The area you see shaded in red was, when the US was in Panama, they also had military bases. So these were areas where they had shooting ranges practices. So it was all contaminated material. So we did a clearing of 1 meter, and then we used that as a disposal site area, and now it's usable land. We can see here how the new access was built, and this is what it looks like today. And we can see here a small, well, relatively small Panamax container vessel going through the old traditional locks, Pedro Miguel, and then you see a new one going through the new access channel. The locks was by far the hardest project. If we think of the original construction, 3.5 million cubic meters of concrete were poured. This one was 4.5 million cubic meters of concrete, so much bigger locks. Even though it's a project that is in Panama, it was built from all over the world. The gates were designed and fabricated in Korea. The valves, the gates were designed in Netherlands and built in Italy. The main contractors were from the USA. All of the steel rebar came from Mexico. We did hydraulic models in Argentina. And also in France, we did physical models, and Spain also worked in the design of the control systems. This is basically what the water-saving basins look like. It's all gravity-fed, it's just different levels, and this is what allows us to be more effective with the usage of the water, which is a precious resource for a canal to operate. These are the gates. You can see they're about an 11-story building, and they were shipped from Italy to Panama in different vessels, and they're different sizes because we have an 18-foot tidal range in the Pacific, about a foot tidal range in the Atlantic. So gates, depending if they're in the lower, middle, or upper chamber, they have different dimensions. This is what the project looked like in 2009. In 1939, the US tried to build the third set of locks, and the project was actually stopped because of the World War II. So when they started the excavations, and the lake-looking thing you see in the middle of the picture is basically the excavations they had in 1939. So this is what the project site looked in the Atlantic side when we awarded the contract in 2009. And we can see here the process of the project, how it was being built. Basically had a 1.5-year delay. It was forecasted to be finished in 2014, and it was concluded in 2016. Here we can see one of the vessels that we leased for 60 days, so we could operate, our pilots and our tugboats could operate the locks with the new system. There are some significant changes between the original locks and the new locks. This is what it looks like in the Pacific side. They also tried to do some excavations in 1939. The alignment was not the right one, so we actually used the excavations to make the water-saving basins, and we excavated the main area for the locks. So the main differences between the existing locks and the new locks, well, they're all existing now, the original 1914 and the 2016, is that we have a filling and emptying system that it comes through the walls, lateral, because that way we don't need to do dry chamber works to do the maintenance. In the original locks, because we have 2 lanes, you can take one out of service while the other one is still operating. We only build 1 lane, so you cannot stop it for maintenance. So it's side filling and emptying system. We have rolling gates, which is also, they're maintained on site. The original locks have miter gates that you actually need to bring a ship, float them, and take them to a shipyard. That also closes the lane for a little bit. And we don't use locomotives. If you have been to the original locks, or if you go visit them, you'll see that the vessels are positioned inside the chamber, with locomotives. The new locks use tugboats. So those are like the main differences. Environment, it was very critical in the referendum time. So we did several things. We reforested twice as much hectares as we deforested. We also had animal rescue. This was all enforced through the different contracts that we were awarded. We also had a 5-year contract for $1 million with the Smithsonian for research on areas that had never been excavated before. And we also had an archaeologist on call for any findings, and we found over 2,000 different artifacts that were worthy of rescuing. This is the map of Panama. We did the reforestation all over the country with the Ministry of Environment. Something that was key here is we normally do all reforestation in our watershed, but they wanted us to spread the project out. And since we're focusing on women, something that came very interesting of this project, we asked the contractors to hire the local labor force of the areas. These are all national parks. And most of the people that were contracted were women because of their how they were very entrepreneur and they were very interested. And also, I'll tell you another interesting note about women in the project. This project was a 5-year project for each reforestation program. It was 1-year plantation, 4 years of maintenance, and it provided income for the people in these national parks. Some people send their children to school, some people build a worthy house, and a lot of them acquire a lot of techniques on how to do plantations for either selling decorative plants or plants that they could consume and then sell the products like coffee and fruits and others. The main challenges besides dealing with people, when you have a project where you have 14,000 people that have worked in the project and at one point in time you have about 8,000, the biggest challenge was dealing with people. But the main challenges that were of a technical, well, this was a personal. We had a labor stoppage in February 2014. The contractor claimed that they had a $1 billion overrun in the project, and they needed payment, otherwise they wouldn't continue with the work, so they stopped for two weeks. And we sat down on the table for about 3 months. They did go back to work after 2 weeks, and we said the contract has a very specific way of dealing with claims if you think there's claims that have validity to you. So we went back on the table for 3 months until we came to an agreement on how to go about this $1 billion. And we also had some leakages that were not supposed to happen. We did some testing on the project, and even though we don't need to dry chamber the new locks, we experimented with one side full of water and the other one empty, and all these cracks came on the concrete. That was not supposed to happen. It ended up being a design problem, and the contractor went and had to insert additional steel rebar to protect the seal. Of course, with today's day and age and the media, when these things come out, you have to deal with all of the stress that people went to a referendum, voted yes for a project of $5.2 billion when Panama economy at the time was $16 billion, so it was a massive amount of money. But when, thank God, 5 years later, we're producing a lot of money for the country. So negotiation techniques were critical for those 3 months that we actually were dealing with the contractor on how to go about what they considered was their claims. And also transparency, critical for a project of this magnitude with loans, with a referendum. So to us was key to do all kinds of reports to the government, to the banks. We had also a owner's control insurance program. So we had all kinds of reports put out for the public so they would be informed on what was going on with the project. Human capital was key. This is what makes things happen. We had over 80 different nationalities in the project. 13, if we think about the Panama Canal labor force in the project, 13% was women. If we think of the project in this context of the 14,000 people, about 10% were women. Something that was very interesting, we had, before we embarked in the project, we have made an agreement with INADE, which was an institution, educational institution, and we wanted to guarantee that there was enough local labor force hired. 90%, the law says 90% unskilled workforce needs to be local and 85% skilled work. So to guarantee that the contractors would find the right labor workforce, we had some training in key activities like crane operation, heavy equipment maintenance, welding, masonry. And we had quite a few women being crane operators and heavy equipment maintenance. And also the people that do the signaling for the trucks, that by the end of the project, they were all women because they were more reliable. They would show up to work on Mondays, especially if it was after payday. So that was a mindset that changed on the contractors, and you saw the evolvement. Also for safety, most of the safety officers were women because they were also more attentive to unsafe situations. So you could see how some trades that we have and some abilities can be accentuated for certain trades. Teamwork, key as everything in life. And I will tell you a little bit about the pink hard hat, why I acquired pink hard hat. The official color was white, which is the color I wore for the first year and a half, I think, of the project, or first year. And then I switched to pink. Not everything is work. I think to motivate people, you need to have team building activities that are entertaining to keep the people motivated for a very difficult, strenuous project. So celebrations was very important for us, and it kept us going. So we finally had the inauguration in June 2016. So why did I get a pink hard hat? I've never really realized or understood that there was a gap between male and female. I am a marine engineer by trade. I went to a school where we were only 2 women in the faculty. To me, it was not a big deal. My first job was in a shipyard. We were only 2 women in the shipyard. To me, it was not a big deal. I think professionally, when you're a very good professional, your work speaks for yourself. And I never felt a difference or discrimination for being a woman in my field when I was in the professional technical role. I always was promoted by a man. I always replaced a man. So to me, I just thought, well, women don't like to study engineering. They're not interested. When I got appointed to lead the project, when my boss got promoted to be administrator and I got promoted to be vice president of engineering, I was told that I was on probation. I mean, I saw that I wasn't getting the money I was supposed to be getting out of a website because our wages are public. And I went to ask my boss, I said, there's something not right here. And he said, well, you're on probation. And that's when I bought my pink hard hat. It was just to send the message that I'm a woman and I can do this job, and there's no need for me to be on probation. So that was the whole idea. And the pink hard hat became popular and famous beyond what I ever expected it would do. And I'm grateful for it because it has had made a statement for many women to want to achieve things and go through engineering. I'm a big promoter of STEM careers. I think it's very important. So I started in 1985 in the Canal, working in a shipyard. Like I said, surrounded by men, and it's my hard work what took me where I am today. I also was never afraid of taking challenges. To me, applying for a new job anywhere in the Canal was something fun to do, something different, something I would learn. So I never shied away of any job thinking I can't do it. And to me, that was the norm, that was normal. Now that I got into women, rights and equality and all that, I realized that women sometimes need a little bit of a push on that. We sort of want to be 100% sure on what we know before we strive for something, and we need to be more brave and more courageous and strive for something, because if we really want it, we'll find a way to make it work. So another thing that is very important to me is to keep learning and studying, and I love to learn by experiencing things. So the picture you see there is part of the team. On the top, we were getting certified as project managers. Picture on the bottom, I made sure that everybody that's working in the expansion program would make a transit through the Panama Canal. There were people that were 20 years working in the Panama Canal and never done a transit. So if we're building a locks, we should know and experience what that is. So I think learning by experiencing is very important, and that's why I think role models are very important, because role models show in real life what you can achieve and what you can do. And I think, going back to the conversation earlier, yes, you can have policies, but if you don't have role models, policies won't make a big difference. And I'll tell you why. The Panama Canal has an equal opportunity employer forever, but we're only 10% of the women are female in the workforce of 9,000 people. Out of those 900 women, there's only 187 in non-traditional jobs. And I'll give you a very simple example. We all drive cars, and we have a fleet of 400, 500 cars in the company, and we have drivers. Last year was the first time we had a female driver in the Panama Canal. Women would not apply to those jobs because they never saw each other, but we all drive. So we realized we also got the certified as the Seal of Equal Equality from the United Nations, PNUD, and we got the silver. We have the policies, but we don't have the people. So we started analyzing, and the way we advertised for positions, they were all men-geared, because the Canal traditional has been a male-dominated company. It's been engineering. So now when we advertise a position, you put a picture of a man and a woman. So you can see the woman can identify herself in that role. So, well, we have one woman driver in the Panama Canal as of today. Embrace opportunities. I think it's very important. That's something that we also need to tell people. Embrace opportunities. Don't shy away from them. A lot of people, when we were invited to be in the project, some people shied away because it might be too difficult. Yeah, but the rewards will be great. So I think that's something that we need to embed in people, and especially in women. Never perfect, always authentic. I think that's also some message that I like to tell teenagers and high school kids when they're going for their career. I think it's very important that you are the same person you are in any forum you're acting. So I think that's one of the values I like to present. And also be vulnerable. I was terrified of heights. I still am, in a way. So something that I had to overcome during the expansion was my fear of heights, because I had to fly in a helicopter once a month to do the takes of the project. And the first time I got on the helicopter, I was not in charge of the project yet. That was about a year before. My boss had a meeting, and he says, "Can you please take over my job today?" So when I get into the helicopter, I see they're taking the doors away, and I'm going like crazy, like, what's happening here? So the photographer says, "Well, Ms. Marotta, we need to put the camera out of the helicopter, so we fly with no doors." So I was terrified, needless to say. I told him I am afraid of heights. So I buckled myself up. I went like this, and there I went. And I traveled once a month in a helicopter for many years. After that, when I went to see the fabrication of the gates, which was fantastic, like I said, they're like an 11-floor building. I started climbing really eager, and when I'm halfway in the scaffolding, I'm like, oh my God, I'm afraid of heights. What am I doing? So I turn around, I tell the engineer, do they have verandas up there? He goes, yes, we sure do. So you see me there next to the edge, but really I was super away from the edge. And then my graduation of the fear of heights was when I climbed on the pylon tower of the Centenario Bridge, which has no railing. It's a little tiny concrete patch, and I'll have to tell you, when they opened up the hatch and I stood up, my legs went like jelly and I had to sit down. But after a while, I embraced the courage to do it. So of every challenge, there's an opportunity and a gain and a lesson that we can do. So be genuine, be authentic, and overcome your fears. And leadership is not a right, it's not a category. It's something that you earn day by day. And I love this quote from the CEO of Novartis. Something that I've always done since 1985 when I joined the Canal, I got involved in everything. When you get involved in things, you tell the people the message that what you're doing is important, what you're doing I care for, and you learn a ton. When I first became a manager, I was always a very technical, engineering-oriented person, and some finance. I had to be the boss of environmental, safety, historical documentation, contracting, and legal. The best way for me to learn and to make the right decisions was learning from the experts, the people. So when you get involved, you learned a lot, and you send a very good message, and you build teamwork. And to accomplish anything, it's teamwork, and that's what we're doing here this morning. We're building connections to be a big team on things that are important. Open door policy is something that I always have. It does make for long days, but I think it's important that you listen to the people and their concerns. And we are all have leadership. We never know who is watching us, who's looking at us, what impact are we making on people. So I think it's very important that that's another message that I always tell the young adults, young people, students. The way you act, it's being looked at by somebody else around you, your neighbor, your brother, your coworker. So the way we act daily, it's very important because it reflects who we are. And I love this, the attitude, and it's not your aptitude what will determine your altitude. When we chose the people for the expansion program, I look at attitude, because if you have a person that is very brilliant but doesn't have the attitude to work in a team or give the most out of that person, you will not achieve great things. But if you have a person that is willing to give it all, it will learn the skills it needs, it will learn what it needs to make things work. So I think attitude will acquire the aptitude for certain skills. So that's also very, very important. And most of all is that we all have our own sanity, our own space. I do get up in the morning, I get up at 5:30, work out. To me, working out is a stress release, and I think it's good for your health. I read my Bible every morning, and I love the ocean. So you also always need to find time for yourself and your well-being, because if you are doing good, then the people that are around you will be great. And it's about teamwork, not only in the office, but it's also in the home front. I have a very supportive husband that has been next to me in everything I have to endeavor. And also I tell people all the time, do not be afraid of asking for help. We are not super women. We won't accomplish everything on our own. It's impossible. So nobody needs to feel lesser for asking the help of somebody else, a neighbor, your parents, your brothers. I think that is key in success. And I'll leave you with this small statement, which I love. They said they asked a great mathematician, Arab, Al-Khwarizmi, about the value of the human being, and he said, if it has ethics, its value, it's 1. If it's also smart, add a 0, and its value will be 10. If it's also rich, add another 0, and it will be 100. But if, above all, it's a good person, add another 0, and the value will be 1,000. But if it loses the 1, it will be left with zeros, and that's worth nothing. So with that, I hope I show you a little bit of what the Panama Canal was, the construction, and any questions, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Ilya. Fue muy interesante la parte técnica como la parte personal.